first SILS. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first SILS, which is the SCG International Lecture Series. And this is our first lecture of the whole series. And I hope that all of our audiences will also participate in the next events that we will conduct. Today, both SCG University of Indonesia and SCG Kurukshetra is bringing forward the topic of fundamentals of geocellular or static modeling, a multidisciplinary approach to reduce risk. My name is Stella, and I am honored to be your moderator for this exciting session. And I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you who takes the time to join us, and a special welcome to our distinguished speaker, Mr. Eduardo Berenson, whose expertise will guide us through today's session. And we also want to welcome Jess from the SCG Student and Early Career Advisor. We're fortunate to have you here, and I would like to welcome you to the stage, to the floor, to share a few words of encouragement and welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Stella. I am always glad to be invited and get to speak to our amazing SEG students and student chapters. I am spotlighted, it says. Yay. Like Sils said, I am a student and early career advisor with SEG, and I help run most of the programs. I was so fortunate to meet Stella at SLS, and I hope to meet a couple of you at SLS this year as well. Those applications actually close in the middle of February, so make sure you get those in. At SEG, we are just so excited for all of you students to, continue your education, do these little, virtual conferences, all of these things that you do at your student chapter and at your university are pivotal in your future careers. Everything you do, every time you plan a meeting, you host a meeting, any little thing that you do will lend itself perfectly to your CV and to your future role in the industry. And anything that you do on LinkedIn, I try and share and repost all of the great things that you do. I love seeing your, faces at your events. And I'm not sure if you saw it this week, but we had two of our past SEG Evolve students land their first careers in Italy at E&I. And so that was just something very, very near and dear to my heart as a past educator, that, our programs were that vital in their life that after being in our program, they got an immediate internship at E&I, and then now they are full-time employees. So I will kick it back to you, Stella, but I am your biggest cheerleader at SEG, and anything that you need, email me. And if I can't handle it, I will send it to the right department and get an answer for you. Like I said, my biggest thing that I can do is help support you and be your cheerleader. So thank you, Stella. Thank you, students. And anything you need, just email me. I'll put my email address in the chat.
Thank you very much, Jess, for giving us such a warm welcome. And yeah, I will also encourage all of the students who are joined in this meeting to be actively participated in SEG, because for me personally, as a student, it has given me a lot of benefits, a lot of connections that I never thought I would have before. And yeah, thank you, Jess. And for that, we can move on to the next session, which is the opening speech from me. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to welcome you all again to our today's session. My name is Stella, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of SCG University of Indonesia Student Chapter for the past year. And on behalf of our chapter, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to our esteemed speaker, which is Mr. Eduardo Berenson, for sharing their time and expertise with us today. I also want to express my heartfelt thanks to our collaborators from SCG Kurukshetra from India, whose support has been invaluable in making this SCG SILS event a success. And a special thank you as well to our advisor, Jess, for your time and guidance, and to all of you for joining us. Your participation makes this event truly meaningful. And I encourage everyone here to actively participate, ask questions, and take full advantage of this opportunity to learn from one of the best in the field. We will have the Slido link for you to ask your questions through the chat. And then this session is not just about listening, but also about exchanging ideas. So I encourage you to actively participate through the Slido link or At the end of the session, you can open your mic and then ask your questions to our speaker, Mr. Edward Berenson. That's all from me. Thank you, and I will hand over the floor to Sneh as the president of Seg Kurukshetra student chapter from India to say one or two words of welcome.
Thank you, Stella. Good morning, participants. My name is Sneh Yadav, and currently I'm serving as the president of the Seg Kurukshetra University Geophysical Society. We Seg KUGS, along with the Seg Indonesia, we are collaborating for this international lecture series. And behalf of all the collaborative students and the chapters, I feel immense pleasure to invite Mr. Eduardo A. Berenson to be our first chapter speaker. As right now we are having Jessica Dostal, so I would like to invite her also. And she is currently working as the student and early career advisor at the SEG. So Jessica, we all welcome you all into this first session of the lecture series.
Okay, thank you, Sneh, for your kind words. Once again, welcome all, and then welcome Mr. Ed, welcome Jess, and also welcome Sneh, and then welcome to all our participants. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our speaker for today. Oh, yeah, before that, let's have a photo session. I forgot. Okay. For all participants, can you guys open your camera and then we can have a photo session for a moment? And then we can move on with our next part of the event. Is anyone going to be taking a screenshot? Please let us know. Okay.
Okay, so now we will do a documentation session. Please, participant, turn on camera.
Now you feel like me during our Evolve sessions when I'm like, guys, come on, turn on your camera.
And it's always so hard to get people open their camera.
I know you feel kind of awkward, like, come on, I know you're there. Come on. And it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, it's not 3.
Okay, let's wait until 9:14 maybe, 1 minute, for them to open their camera and then we can take the picture. I think we can take the picture now.
Okay, slide 1, get ready. 3, 2, 1. Okay, next slide. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fatan. Now that we have already done our photo session, let me introduce our speaker for today's event. Maybe, okay. Mr. Eduardo Berenson is a petroleum geologist with 33 years of experience in the industry. He has an extensive knowledge, especially in static modeling. That's why he is our today's speaker. Thank you, Jess. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Eduardo Berenson to the floor today. Welcome, Mr. Ed.
Thank you, Stella.
Okay. We can maybe have your presentation right now.
Okay, so I'm so I'm sharing. Let me know. Let's see. You So what is that you can see at this point?
Your whole slide, nothing else.
Okay, nothing else. You do not see the next slide.
No, I do not.
Okay. Okay, there you go. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm glad to be here to give you an insight on static modeling and geocellular modeling, and I would like to have the opportunity to really welcome this kind of initiatives that the SEG is doing, and similarly as the AAPG. This is actually the first one that I'm doing with the SEG, but I've done this for many years with the AAPG. Interesting, Jessica, that you mentioned Milan, that the activity, you had some interest there. I worked for ENI for many years, and I actually lived in Milan for 3 years, I believe. And so I have good memories there. My daughter actually graduated in the American School of Milan. So good, all good there. Anyway, I like to be this as informal as possible. In other words, I want to give you the opportunity to interrupt me and really challenge me and share your thoughts at any one point. You don't really have to wait until the end to ask. If you, like me, I've forgotten the questions that I had in the third slide by the time the presentation is over, so ask me whenever you have the question, and you can raise your hand and Stella will let me know. And we can have that conversation. I also like to apologize. I have a little bit of a rough voice because I'm coming out of a cold here, and but hopefully it will not be too bad. Let's see. So with that, this is an outline of the agenda. What we will talk about today. It's about 10 points, but I'll have about 15 slides. We will talk about what is a geocellular model and what they are used for. More importantly, I will emphasize throughout this presentation that this is truly an integrated approach, meaning it is a multidisciplinary. You really require large teams to be working together and really sharing knowledge to put together the different elements of an static model. We will talk about the key part of the models. I call them the components of the geocellular model, the building blocks, the structural framework, the petrophysical properties, and we will deepen our understanding on each one of those with the different aspects of it. And then the models are truly statistical in nature, so I have at least one slide on the statistics. And ultimately, I'll do a volume calculation slide, and I'll talk about the uncertainty, which addresses what we know less, what we do not understand, and an attempt to quantify uncertainty. And then my last slide will be on the future trends on geocellular modeling, and then I have one slide on conclusions. So if you don't have any questions at this point, I can start.
Does anyone have any questions?
Or clarification that you like me to ask? No. Okay. So please feel free to stop me at any time. So a geocellular model is also known as the static model. It's truly it's a digital 3D representation of the subsurface. We used to work in grids in 2D. Now we have cells, and they represent a 3 dimension of properties, of multiple properties in the subsurface. So it's a statistical distribution of rocks and corresponding fluids in the geological formation. I'm hoping that some of you have been exposed to static modeling and at least understand what it is. But this presentation is what a model is. I am not going to go deep into how you do it. In each one of the slides, I was just talking to Stella before the presentation. Each one of the slides, I can give you a 3 hours to a half a day workshop on how to do it. But today I want you to understand what it is and what it is used for. So we'll talk about future presentation on how to do that. And actually, Petrel has a lot of training programs, which is one of the most common software used in the industry, Petrel, from Schlumberger, that it can really show you how to do this. And it takes many years to really be proficient in this. But I want you to really have a clear understanding of the tool and what a static model is used for. So in fact, in this slide, I'm also outlining the utility of a model, which is to visualize the subsurface in terms of its geometry and the heterogeneity of the properties. So you can see here that the colors are, for example, representing porosity, and you see the variability and heterogeneity of the porosity within one sequence in here, no? The models are also used to help to predict the location, optimal well locations in a field. We typically do this in an oil field. It can also be done in a mine as well. We also use the model to quantify the hydrocarbon volume and its distribution. And it certainly helps us manage uncertainty by generating multiple scenarios. Because it's statistically driven, you can create multiple scenarios, always honoring the well data within the field. And also, it's important to understand that it is the static model, it is the foundation for a dynamic model that is really required by reservoir engineers in the oil and gas to really simulate the fluid flow and the production scenarios that they need to generate. So truly, the model is a static foundation for dynamic modeling, and it's a guidance for drilling, resource management, and a fantastic way to help make decisions and optimize recovery. So again, I'm going to be repeating different things in different contexts, but it's really all about integrating the different elements of the subsurface. So we're talking about the structural geology. You need a structural and a structural seismic stratigrapher. You need a modelers, you need the positional environment understanding, you need the petrophysicist, the sedimentologist, understanding the rock at the different scales, for example, the diagenesis and the fluid properties, understanding the rock typing and the facies configuration of the depositional environment, and such as porosity and oil, gas, water, and how they are distributed, where the barriers are or the baffles, and really ultimately to defining it, how much volume do we have, how much is extractable, and what we can do with it. Part of this assessment is also an uncertainty understanding, because we have a limited understanding of the subsurface, even though we do seismic well data. The amount of data is quite limited, so we want to recognize that and address the uncertainty through statistical quantitative analysis. I also want to emphasize here that the static model is also just one piece of the large reservoir management that is required in an oil field. You need your dynamic simulation, which I talked about, the drilling and well completions, which is performed by different type of engineers and disciplines, production engineers and the process facilities engineers, and of course it all goes back to interpretation. And for 40 years we exploit a field doing this again and again and again, updating the data, acquiring new data, enhancing the technology, and extracting more oil in the case of, or gas, if that's the case. But this is the picture of the static model. We only just one small piece of the larger reservoir management. So again, repeating myself, but in different contexts, the components of the geocellular model really start with loading the data. We load the different types of data into Petrel, in the software, the most common software in the industry put out by Schlumberger. And by the way, most of these pictures come from Petrel, so I want to honor that in here, that the software really, and most of these workflows are Petrel based. So the core is really the study by the sedimentologists and tying it with the petrophysics, and this log analysis is crucial to understand from the multiple wells that are run in a single well, from gamma ray, density, neutron logs, and all of these logs are to acquire different types of properties, and to give us an understanding of where and in what depths the different properties are changing and how the reservoir are behaving in the subsurface. And then this seismic stratigraphy, the structural geologists is evaluating the seismic. They're going to provide us with the horizon, the fault geometry, and the sequence stratigraphic sequence that are really going to define the layering of the structure in the subsurface. Then by using analog data, we put together all of these depositional models. These are the different components of the model. These depositional models, always core-based, always tied to the rock, which is the only direct measurement that we have. The core is the only direct measurement of all of these. Seismic log, they are indirect measurements. So you define these phases in the subsurface, use the analog data, and then attempt to, if possible, to distribute these properties using petrophysical based on a few wells that we have typically. But we use seismic data and their attributes to guide us and try to quantify the attributes with the well log data to help us understand the distribution or correlation or trends between wells. And then another key component is the volumetric calculation, the oil in place calculation, and the probability calculation. I need to speed up a little bit here, but I can talk forever about each slide, but really we can do a workshop on each slide here. But help me out with the time a bit, Stella, so push me, don't let me just dwell too much on one
Okay.
slide.
We
The slide that I have here,
Mhm.
the slide that I have here is the building blocks. We use grids and cells here, which are all the different properties are represented in the grids. So the grid resolution here, the cell size, really depends on why are we doing the model, what's the purpose of the model. Just broadly, the finer the grid, the more detailed and accurate the model is going to be, but it will require a lot of computer power and time that it may or may not be necessary depending on the objective. So clearly a key decision here is decide with your team, why are we building this? Is it necessary to dynamically model it, or we just want to visualize it, or we just want to have an understanding of the next couple of wells, and how large are we going to do this model? Do we need to model the entire field, or we just need to be, it just needs to be in this fault block where the next two wells are going to be? So that's critical too. So you don't have to do the model of the entire field if it is not that was required. This takes time. It's truly an integrated effort. So part of the grid here, you can grid with different methodologies, but ultimately in the grid, if you're gonna do dynamic model, you want cell orthogonality. Well, before I go into that, let me talk about it, because gridding is requires detail, and the detail requires resources. You need to decide what's the right grading size. So notice that in this example, we are upscaling the well to generalize the properties. For example, these are these are porosities, and you can see that in this example how much we are generalizing and averaging the properties of the rock. So we're doing this as an example here to increase the grid, to have a realistic and pragmatic representation. So generalization of the properties is going to be a challenge throughout the different stages, because if you're going to do it at the high detail, it's going to take forever, it's going to be costly, and it's going to be of limited utility. Remember, you need to update your model every time you drill a new well. So is it worth to do it in tremendous detail? Maybe not. So that's truly a question that it needs to be asked. So another key component here is the grid types that you use. If you use pillar gridding, it's going to be for complex faulting, parallel to the faults. You can see here, but you lose orthogonality of the cell. The orthogonality is the perpendicularity of the grids of the cells. So you can see that in pillar gridding, you do not have orthogonal cells. However, if you use stair-step grids, which engineers love it because you're simplifying the fault, they use it because they like it because of the simplicity and how the models can be run faster too. So the type of grading it really need to be determined not by an individual, but by the entire team. It is truly a multidisciplinary approach because of the utility of what you're building. And here, just to emphasize that the reservoir is modeled in detail. This next one is thick, is probably a shale, and this deeper target, not as detailed as the upper target, but it's an exploratory target. So I'm just going to put an in-between average cell size of, let's say, 5 feet, while in here is a 2 feet, as an example, So the next part of the next section of the model is the structural fault modeling, and you're going to use heavily the seismic here. You're going to define the fault plane configuration. You're going to define in detail the orientation of the faults, the intersections, and the network. You're gonna work with the geophysicist of the faults, how well he can see the faults, or how important they are. The geophysicist is gonna provide you the fault gap or the fault sticks to help you guide the throat or the fault displacement. You're gonna determine and talk to the engineers and different data types. It's gonna help you determine, are the faults sealing? Ultimately, you need to determine how these faults are behaving in the fluid. Are they barriers or are they baffles? What is the juxtaposition of the faults in two sides? How much shale do you have? Meaning shale gauge ratio, Are the faults cemented? Have they been reactivated recently? And how are they behaving? All of that gonna help you determine how are they behaving and how you're gonna model them, what role they're gonna play. And so the integration of the four properties and the geometries is gonna really help you determine what kind of grid type and decision you're gonna be taking. There is also an Allen diagram that you can do that will help you visualize this and help you better understand the fault juxtaposition in both sides. But in the end, remember, we're going to ask you to, the team is going to ask you to do it quickly and do it simple but meaningful and relevant to the risk and uncertainties that you have. It's all about simplification, and in every stage, we're going to try to simplify it. So the next component is we call this the structural fault model, and now we call the structural framework. Again, working with the geophysics, using the horizons, the structure configuration, and the fault geometry, but now we are integrating it. Now we integrated it in the grid. It is tied with the fault, with the upscale well data. Now we define the zones, which is the sequences, which each sequence is going to have a distinct property. Yes?
Hey. Sorry, I think one of the participants accidentally left their mic.
They left the mic open.
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay. So in each of the sequences, we're going to have distinct properties, in terms of the fluids, in terms of the fluid storage, also known as for the porosity or the connectivity or the property of permeability. And really, sometimes we can calibrate this with the petroacoustic properties and provide meaningful information, such as the rock types and the reservoir quality. The seismic attributes are going to be key, and they're going to really help us quantify the type of rocks that we have. And so the structural framework is integrating the fault, the zones, the layers, and it's really going to take between the fault configuration and the structural work. That's going to take the majority of the time in here. How are we doing with time, Estela?
Wait a second. Timekeeper, can you tell us? We also have timekeeper, actually, yeah.
Okay, good. You're quite organized. I think I have 22 minutes so far I've been talking.
Okay, I think you have around 10 minutes left.
Okay, cool. Okay. And okay, so a little pause here, let's just relax here. Now, and yes, we work in an integrated study. It's all about perspective, but really, in this case, the geologists typically we think differently than the engineers, but believe me, having worked 35, 37 years in the industry, we need the engineers and they need us. So we need to work together in different disciplines. And truly, this guy is seeing 4 different pieces of wood here, layers of wood. This guy sees 3. It's just in what perspective you seeing it. But we all interested on the same thing, and we building the same furniture, Okay, moving on with this, the petrophysical properties is a key component of the model, to embrace the phases from the petrophysics, the porosity and the permeability distribution. It is critical to define that at the core level and then at the log level. And then with the well phases proportions, you're going to determine your net to gross. Your well phases are going to really help you define your phases distribution. And with that, you're going to define your geologic model tied to your analog. And you tie and understand the well phases distribution and proportion and population to the model. And then now you need to implement that statistically, either that in a deterministic fashion, I'm talking about phases modeling now, to define those trends and interpolation between the well data. You can do it deterministically or stochastically. In the deterministic space, you can actually draw it or use an object base, channels of fans, subsea fans. There's different approaches to define the models. You can, or stochastically, which is random with multiple realizations. And Petrel has multiple approaches in this here. And the most common, multiple algorithms, I should say. The most common is a sequential indicator, which uses statistical data and conditions to seismic data when available to seismic attributes and distribute properties quite well. Okay, so basically property population within the depositional phases. Now, this is key to understand that your porosity distributions, your permeability are going to be tied to the phases in which they are found. For example, here, that if you encounter this is, for example, a depositional fan. So the porosities in the fan are going to be quite different than the background data. So they are only used statistically within the fan. This is why the phases distribution and the phases model is critical, because you're relying so much on the distribution of the properties within it. And the permeability, the same, the permeability within the fans versus channels or versus background data is very different. And this truly shows that, because so it is, we do not make just distribution of properties without a context of the phases. That's how we used to do it back 25 years ago. And it was really a statistical soup. We didn't contain that. But now you have to have the geological model. You have to have those phases well contained, well defined, using the core data and using the sedimentological understanding and the analog. So it has to be geologically reliable. And actually, with all of this, you can have multiple scenarios, and define what is important to use, different scenarios of heterogeneity, of connectivity, and reservoir quality. Remember, you can ask me at any time, any question, and moving right along here. So a slide on statistics here. Now, when it comes to statistics, we have a tool, the variogram, which is very important. You're gonna, everything is statistical here. So you have the porosity here in a histogram, and then the different colors represent the different phases. So you have the porosity expressed in different phases by different colors. So you see that phases A is the lowest, but is the most abundant. And phases, the yellow is occurs throughout and is the highest, in phases C and so forth. So that's an important piece, when I talked about the phases distribution. It's important to understand the different properties within the phases and the different distributions. So when it comes to the variogram, a variogram really is a tool that helps us to evaluate the spatial patterns in the petrophysical properties. So the properties they occur in trends, linear trends. They occur in an orientation. So to do that, we use semi-variograms, which are statistical graphs that show spatial correlation between different data points at different distance. So probably many of you have used the variograms. And this variogram shows different directions. Here I have different definitions of parts of the variogram. I don't have time to go into the detail, but it's important to understand that you're talking about the orientation of the data, the direction of continuity and discontinuity of your data, also known as anisotropy. It's just a fancy name for that. But this is, some people like to use the variograms, other people like to map the anisotropy. It depends how you like it, but both help you understand that based on the location of your different wells, there is trends of orientation, in what orientation the porosity is linear and in what orientation is really changing. That's the anisotropy. So statistically, you need to use that. And that allows you to help to create multiple distributions, if you understand that. So we model all the different grids, all the different properties, and now it's time to do the volume calculation. You have your net to gross. Here is another representation of the net to gross, which is a key petrophysical component. You have your porosity, you have it in grid now. So you have it distributed in a space. You have your water saturation distributed in a space. Then you have the formation volume factor. This is just the formula, the formation volume factor using P sub O, which converts reservoir to subsurface condition. The recovery factor, if you're interested in what is produced, and boundaries. Boundaries is if you want to define the volumetrics within a fault block, you're just going to use the boundaries, or sometimes you use the fault blocks. But just to when we talk about the formation volume factor, the B sub O, we're talking about stock tank oil in places, okay? So if we take this out, it will be the oil in place. So sometimes we use STOIP or sometimes OIP. It depends what you really need, what the team is really asking you to do. And this is really the different multiplication of the attributes, with the graphs. By now you define the fluid contacts and all of that. Petraeus really walk you through the volumetric calculation. It's not very challenging in that space, but you do need to know the software very well. But ultimately, you'll do this volumetric. And then you do a statistical calculation of volume, not a single one. Because you have multiple scenarios, you can do a statistical distribution of the volume. And in fact, with that, you have the uncertainty of what you don't know on how those properties are distributed. This is just a statistical distribution, tie on well, tie on seismic, and really it's an unreliable measurements that we have. It's an incomplete data set that we have. And the variability has created a lot of uncertainty. So you can apply each of the components of the formula that we talk about, and you have a distribution in each one of them, from the gross rock volume to the net to gross to the porosity and the permeability. Again, using a software, it enables you to create distribution in each one of the input components in the formula of the oil in place, and ultimately you define the uncertainty ranges of each one of them. They are certain through creation of the tornado diagram, and you see that which one has the greatest uncertainty. In this case, it's got the gross rock volume, and it's always is because of the seismic. If you flex the seismic, meaning if it is higher or lower, depending on the time depth conversion, that creates a huge uncertainty for the volume. So typically in an oil and gas field, the gross rock volume, which is tied to the horizon of the seismic, is going to create the greatest uncertainty in volume. And then the net to gross, how much net rock do you have that? That's a huge uncertainty. So typically these two are your greatest uncertainties, ranges of uncertainty in your volume calculation. Typically, but not always, And of course, you want to use probabilistic approach. What is your P50, your P10, and your P10 in each one of these? And in the end, you're going to calculate your probabilistic definition of the oil and gas, never provide a single deterministic value because we just don't know that that's going to be the case, you know? And so my last slide to you guys is the future trends in modeling, you know, beyond AI, with AI and beyond, you know. So as you can see, technology is all around us. It's really, we have new seismic, more wells, more accurate readings of the cores, better calibration with the logs, and the quantification of the data is better and better every 10 years, you know. And so we have a number of technological enablers happening all around us in the last 10 years. And the first one I want to mention is quantum computing. You know, this has changed the game in accelerating computing, contextual computing, you know, and this is really going to help us improve efficiency and productivity. Has helped us already. And then you have neural networks now that you utilize in multiple industries, not just the oil and gas. Neural network has been with us for a long time, and in petrophysics is used deeply, you know, on how best to operate trends and associate them and quantify them and use them for concluding points, you know. We also use another enabler and technology that is developing around that is deep and machine learning. Again, in multiple industries, but again, in petrophysics and in time, the seismic, real time sometimes, machine learning happening for seismic acquisition and seismic processing, and how best to utilize that. Artificial intelligence has been with us for in the last 5 years, and it's really changing in the last 2 years, helping us to accelerate contextual learning and results, you know. And really now we are putting together hybrid models with AI data-driven automated models that is beyond and augmenting of human intelligence, is beyond of what we humans can do. And so in modeling, you know, with data management and integrated knowledge that we've learned in the last 20 years, with the petroacoustic and seismic attribute analysis that are happening real time, with the data-driven models that are tied to models and realistic data from the seismic, petrophysics, sedimentology, petrophysical data, engineering, fluid, history matching, all of that. You know, we creating predictive and analytical models that provide an already uncertainty and in a quantified fashion that are really making decisions easier in a larger in teams, you know. And so everybody plays a role in here. Everybody's contribution is critical, and I hope that this presentation with I think my next slide is really a conclusion, but it's really emphasized the same thing of what I've been saying all along, you know, the different emphasizing on the right, the different components. That is an integrated study. It is multidisciplinary. You do not do it alone. It requires that you have an understanding of many of these. Have the opportunity of taking as many classes as possible. Work with different people with different experiences. Associate yourself and challenge yourself. Step out of the comfort zone and learn all the things but because in modeling, it requires that you have different subsurface understandings. So if you're a petrophysicist alone or a seismic interpreter alone, you cannot model this, you know? So in conclusion, I'm going to say what I said all along. It's a static reservoir, is a geocellular model, it's a three-dimensional representation of the geological structures, its phases, petrophysical properties, and fluid properties. It is typically based on well data, core, seismic, and analog data. And it is used for estimating hydrocarbon volume, understanding reservoir variability, heterogeneity, and connectivity, placing the well data in context of what fault block it needs to be, what is isolated and what is not, and it helps us identify production trends, and is the foundation for a dynamic model. Engineers need this to run the fluid dynamic context of production. And with that, I finish, Stella.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ed, for the insightful session. Personally, I have also made like inputs for static modeling, so seeing your presentation actually helped me a lot with my own understanding, and I hope same goes for all the audiences who are here right now in the Zoom. I noticed that we might have several questions on the link that we have sent on the chat. Is it okay if we move on to the question and answer session right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so as you can see, we have several different questions already. For the first one, how do you decide the grid size for your model and settle on the best grid? Through several trials? And how do you know your grid size fits exactly to your needs?
Right. So you don't. So let me put this slide. So the determination of the grid size is really a conversation. It's really different tensions, because different tension. We geologists like to do it in detail because we look at the core and it's the small scale, but the core needs to be associated with the entire with the logs, and the logs with the stacking pattern, and the stacking pattern with the seismic. So at what scale? And the reservoir engineers, they don't care about that. They just want to see what flows and to where and how far.
Yeah.
So it's really a tension, but it's really a dynamic of what is the model for. If you're going to do a dynamic model, you cannot do a small grid. It has to be greater than 3 or 5 feet because it needs to run, it needs to be efficient running. That's why I talk about efficiency when it comes to the model. It also, the computer time is too high if it is high grid. So like in this case, what is the minimum grid that truly represent porosity? That's about right there, because it's getting the average right. You want to get the average of the porosity, the average of the complexity of the rock in the grid. And if you have a more heterogeneous rock, then you can increase your rig. If you have carbonate data, which varies systematically and rapidly, vertically and laterally, you're going to need a smaller grid. But and as this graph shows on the right, the sections that are not reservoir, don't grid it. One cell, it's a zone. We used to put grids there. No, it's a shale. That's why net to gross is key. Net to gross is key because the gross is gonna be one cell. In here, there's another shell. One cell. No need of more grids in there. So for the reservoir, high grid, 3 to 5 feet, depending on what you're doing. For exploration, 5 to 10 feet, depending on what you're doing. I hope that answered your question. These are no black and white answers. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I hope that answers the question that our audiences might have. For the next question, can you go back? Hassan, can you share the screen again? Okay, for the next question, can you actually see the Slido presentation, Mr. Ed, or?
I'm looking at my, can you guys, I'm looking at my slides.
Yeah, same goes for me. Wait, can my team share the Slido questions?
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So you your screen. So I'm going to stop sharing, Stella.
Yep.
So now
Uh-huh.
somebody in your team can.
Okay, that's it. Wait a second. Okay, so I think it also relates to the one other question, which is the how big is the grid usually is and how does it really affect the resolution? And also how long is usually the processing time required for a certain size of grid? Do you have an answer for this?
So how big is the grid usually, and how big is the grid depending on the purpose, as I said, in at the reservoir, it's gonna be 3 to 5. If it is an exploratory target, it's gonna be 5 to 10. And how does it affect the resolution? It very much affects the resolution because the as I mentioned a couple of times already, is that if the finer the grid, the higher the resolution. The coarser the grid, the less the resolution. But remember, you do not, depending what you do in the model for, you do not need a higher resolution for all the all the models. It depends what the team wants the grid for. Okay, so I think that how long and how long is usually the processing time required for a certain grid size. Okay, once you define the grid, you can grid a model depending on how big it is. If it is the entire field with many wells, it's going to take you maybe 30 minutes. It is also depends on how powerful your computer is, Like in BP, we did everything on the cloud, very powerful computers. We didn't. We have a very small computers, but they are just the screen. The power computers were in the cloud, but they were very quick. So there's all different components. If you're doing the modeling in your computer, then how powerful your computer is, is it an Intel 5, 7, 10, or it's a stack computer? It depends.
Okay, I think that answers the question. The next question is, if the fault juxtaposition is not modeled correctly, will it affect the static and dynamic model building?
Absolutely. The fault juxtaposition is key. That's why we can do an Allen diagram, and which help us understand the fault juxtaposition. It helps us to understand, you need to understand the throw, the displacement, the angle of the fault. If it is important, you model it in detail. If the fault does not have relevance and it's a small fault, and or it's a fault that is such a big fault that is a barrier, you can simply model it vertically, and that's the end. You don't need to concentrate and put so much focus. The challenge is the faults that play relevance in the development of a field. You need to understand all of this because ultimately you need to understand how the fault is behaving. Is it behaving as a barrier or as a baffle? And that you need to model and help the engineers construct that. That's why the juxtaposition, the shale gauge, and whether it's cemented or an active fault is relevant in determining that.
I see. Okay. Thank you for your answer, and maybe we can move to the last three questions, I think. Is that okay, or should we
That's
one?
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, have you ever encountered a problem where the current parameter produces multiple different reservoir geometry model? And how do you solve this kind of ambiguity?
Yeah, you do want, absolutely. In fact, you want to create different reservoir geometry. What I don't know, maybe you meant fault geometry. When you talk about the geometry of the reservoir, okay, maybe you talk about the formation of the zone and all of that. But yes, you can have flexing seismic horizons will define different reservoir geometry models and next to faults with different juxtaposition styles, okay? So yes, you can generate that. In fact, the newer models in Petrel, you can generate multiple seismic horizon and adjust the horizon away from the well data in context, and then regenerate the gross rock volume, regenerate the phases and the property distribution. It's not how you solve that. That's what you wanted to do. You want to generate different, yet honoring the data. I said the well data, the seismic needs to be honored. So because we don't know the reality in between the wells, and the seismic can only help so much. So you allow that flexibility of seismic horizons within the context of the seismic. Let's say 100 feet or 200 feet above and below the horizon. You are not going to allow 1,000 meters above the horizon, So, you put uncertainty in context. So you want different options, but I wouldn't call ambiguity. That's part of the uncertainty.
Oh, okay. Maybe after that we can move on to the next question. It kind of relates to the last one that you answered. Is the semi-variogram analysis a must-do step before doing the volume calculations, or is there any other approach besides doing the geostatistics?
So modeling is a geostatistical tool. Because the only thing that we know for sure is the well data and the log. So everything in between, we distribute it based on what we learn in seismic and in the well data and with the log. So unfortunately, modeling is a statistical distribution, and variogram analysis is it very much helps you understand variability and orientation of that variability. So no, you need to understand geostatistical tools to generate to do that. No volume calculation, distributions of properties, which in turn impact volume. I think that's the way to put it. So no, there is no other approach than to use. Maybe you want to use a common porosity. Let's say you don't know enough about it, so you want to use a single value. Well, we know that that's not going to be correct. So no, that will not be wise to use a single value.
Okay.
So
I hope that answers the question from our audience. And last one. I have never run static model before. What differentiates between static and also dynamic model?
okay, as the word describes it, static means not moving, dynamic means moving. So we call the static model is the geological model, is the geocellular model. So that's basically the geology, the subsurface. That's the static model. And when we talk about dynamic model, is what changes the movement of fluid in the rock. That's dynamic because it's changing in time. So it's the factor of change of time, in this case of fluid, is the movement of water, the movement of oil through time, through the years of production in the field.
I see. I'm sure that you answer a lot of questions, that our juniors might have, since a lot of participants who are in this meeting, almost half of it never ran static model before. So, yeah, I'm sure that this session was very insightful for all of us students. And do you have anything to say before we move on to the next session?
Well, no, I hope so. That wraps up my section. I hope it's been of help to you of what a model is. Now, remember, the next thing is to work on how you do it, and that takes training. On each slide, it will take a half a day, Each slide is a half a day workshop in understanding, and you need to do that with a tool. Typically, is the Petrel tool. Yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and thank you for paying attention.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ed. From me myself, I really enjoyed it. It was really insightful, and maybe we can go to the next session after the Q&A, which is the certificate. Well, we are giving you a virtual certificate. This is a token of appreciation from us, SEG University of Indonesia, and also SEG Kurukshetra. I hope that you have a great session with us, and we can talk more about the workshop. It is definitely interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ed, for attending this session and giving us a lot of insights about static modeling.
Yeah. So I know that a few people have left, but for the ones that have remained behind, you know, this is the type of talks that I attended when I was in your place in the university, and half of it I could not understand much, but it really you retain some of this, and it does help you as you take more and more classes, and when you start working, you start really connecting the dots and say, why am I learning this? Why am I learning that? And how can I use this? And in what context is be used? So I hope you continue to participate in these seminars that the SEG, such and Stella and the rest of the team are putting together. I want to say thank you so much for the certificate. It looks so nice, and I will share that with everybody here with my kids.
Yay!
And I really appreciate you doing that. You didn't have to do that. Thank you so much, Stella, and I hope it was of value to you. I mean, that's why
It was very
I put
valuable.
this together.
Oh, before you leave, maybe we can do a photo session with the certificate, and then yeah, maybe
Okay.
my team can help with the photo.
You send me the pictures later, okay, Stella?
Okay, I will. Wait a moment. Okay, my team is working on it. Wait a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So when is the next evolving? What is the next session?
The next session, we're planning it to be like around last December, about
Oh,
the nearing the end of December or the beginning of next year.
oh, okay. And for how long? That's very good. That's maybe 2 a month,
Yeah, if we can.
if
We
you
want
can.
to.
Yeah, you looking for speakers.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wait.
Maybe I can help you with one in June.
Oh, you can wait. Okay, that's great actually. Okay, I will
Yeah,
let my team knows about it too, and we can talk more
yeah.
about
We
it.
can connect.
Okay,
We can connect again in a couple of months.
okay. I think my team has taken the screenshot. Um,
Oh, they have? Okay.
okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ed, for attending this session and giving us a lot of
Okay.
insights. I hope you have a great night. I think it's night already in Houston, right?
Yes, yes. Congratulations to all of you, and of course to Stella for leading this conversation. And congratulations again, Stella, on your leadership and your ability to
Oh,
help us. Also with the colleagues that on the different universities in India. I forget the two individuals that spoke early on, but they are, your leadership is gonna pay off, and uh, I really appreciate you bringing different speakers to talk.
thank you very much, Mr.
Yeah.
Ed.
So all the best.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ed. And to all our audiences, don't forget to check the chat box. We have attendance to get your virtual certificate, and then we can send it to your email after you fill out the forms. Thank you for attending today's event, and once again, thank you, Mr. Ed, for attending. I hope y'all are having a great day, great night, and a great weekend after all.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Mr. Ed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, for all the attendees, before you leave the room, make sure that you have filled out the form for attendance to make sure that you can get the certificate later on to your email. Thank you and have a nice day.